Welcome back to The Gray Area, an informal podcast that is just a couple dudes having a conversation.
As a reminder, nothing we say is intended to offend anyone, but we do welcome your input in the comments below.
Today we have a discussion. Does the media influence people to become more violent?
I'd say, I feel like a lot of things influence people. People influence people. I'd say, yeah, definitely the media does influence people, just as a base standard, you know. I wouldn't necessarily say that all sources.
See, where I think a lot of people relate this kind of a discussion is to video games.
Especially
Because
video games.
I know that there's a lot of people who see, violent video games, which, I personally enjoy playing them.
I agree.
But, I see a lot of people who would have qualms because they think it makes, parents looking at their kids saying, oh, kids are going to become more violent. Maybe it's the news really hates video games. They're always like,
For whatever reason,
they just really hate video games. So
despise it.
video games, I think, is a big contributor to this whole influencing to become more violent
kind of situation. Yeah, I would agree. Because I've never really felt like beating somebody up after reading a book. You know?
You clearly need to read some different books.
To be quite fair, I don't read books in general all too often.
Yeah.
If ever. So it's a bit different for me. But that being said, yeah, I still haven't. I don't think I've felt the same way either when I'm playing video games. I mean, of course, you get frustrated.
You get frustrated. You're like, why
am I
bad? Or why are they bad?
How did that happen? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've never wanted to physically hurt somebody.
Right, but we got to take into consideration we're very, in general, relaxed people.
That's fair. That is fair.
I can see how there is kind of a correlation, not causation. Correlation.
Yeah.
Because you are witnessing violence.
Depending if you were playing.
I mean, yeah, it depends on the game, obviously.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go out,
beating people up after
locked
Candy
and
Crush.
loaded. Candy Crush and Tetris, just like got me really
Heated.
heated. But I can see how some people may be making the correlation. However, I think that it is I don't want to say irresponsible, but it's like it's inconsiderate when you're blaming only video games.
Yeah.
Because yes, video games is a newer type of media, but it's there's movies. There's the news.
There's a whole bunch of other sources of influences that could be found. I know, like, when you're playing video games, I'll rephrase. If you didn't want to hurt somebody in the beginning, you're not gonna want to hurt them after the fact, playing some video games. If I never, in my mind, wanted to go out of my way and physically harm somebody, I'm not going to. Because I don't want to. Even if I play, a few rounds of Call of Duty, and I just get mad and more angry, doesn't mean I'm just going to go out in a rampage and start smacking people upside the head.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that it's, like you said, it's solely on video games.
Yeah.
And I can't deny that video games and other sources of media have a degree of influence over what people say, what people do, how they act.
Well, yeah, because, humans were constantly taking input from all these sources,
Yeah.
Media is a giant one because it's pretty much what's happening in the world.
Yeah.
If
everywhere.
it's news, if you're playing a game, you're playing the game. Where video games are particularly interesting in compared to other forms of media, though, is you are controlling
The
what is
character,
happening.
that is
You're
true.
controlling the character. Whereas if you're, say,
Well-
watching the news and you see that there's been a terrorist attack, you know, you're a passive observer.
That is
You
true.
see it, you have an opinion on it. But with the video game, you know, maybe you're the guy in there and you're like fighting off all the cops, and it's like, nah.
Yeah, and then you.
So, yeah, I think that there could be desensitivity that comes with playing video games.
Oh, definitely.
Perhaps.
I feel like that comes with just the internet in general.
Getting desensitized to a lot of
Because yeah, we keep.
big problems in the world.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. You know,
Yeah,
we hear genocide or not genocide. That's
a different
really,
story.
yeah, that's a different example. But we hear about some 40 people getting slaughtered in another country, and we're like, that's horrible.
Of course,
We're like, it's not.
but we're not going to wake up in the middle of the night with it.
Yeah, we're not going to be sweating too hard. We're not going to be terrified of the fact because we've been so desensitized.
So, I think another piece of this, leading back to the whole video game thing,
Yeah.
we're looking at, we were just a moment ago looking at physical violence.
Yeah.
Do you think that video games maybe influence more non-physical violence, like perhaps verbal violence?
Oh, definitely.
I mean-
Okay, but
No,
Yeah.
not over the video game though.
oh, okay.
Face to face.
Face to face with
Because
somebody.
I've read some reports where it's just like, this mom is just going about her day, and then their child comes down, super angry from their game of Fortnite they lost,
Oh yeah.
and they're shouting and screaming at their mom.
I feel like, yeah, definitely that kid has some problems. I wouldn't say it's specifically Fortnite's. I don't think it's I don't think it's the video games causing that kid to act that way. Because no normal kid, after playing or after losing a game of Fortnite or whatever video game,
Yeah.
is just gonna go out in a store. I mean, it does happen. Sometimes, it's been a bad day and all of these things are just piling on and then you just explode. You just rage out.
Right, but I mean that's one day.
Yeah.
If this is a consistent thing,
Then I would think that it's just the children the child has some problems which are all being, I want to say activated, but it's not the word.
yeah, well, I get what you mean by activated, probed.
Probe,
I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. But when they're playing video games, because, well, I feel like video games have you have a ego when you're playing a video game. You sort of put yourself in the character's shoes, so that when you die or when something bad happens to you, or to your character rather, you feel that.
Yeah, where it's just like,
because
goodness sakes,
Yes.
come on, man.
some people can't separate themselves from a video game or
Well, see,
a
that's
character.
where the problem comes in.
Yeah.
Because if we're having difficulty setting our mindset out of the games, then that's where you run into the trouble where it's like, oh, well, in Grand Theft Auto, I can, myrtleize an entire city and be fine. And obviously, that's not okay.
It just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
it's-
if people have that thing where they can't dissociate between them and their character in the game,
Yeah.
then that's where I think people are starting to make the link.
That's fair. I mean, people have always, put themselves in character shoes, whether no matter what kind of media it is, whether if it's a TV show, a book, or the movie series, it really doesn't matter. People, find themselves in other people.
Yeah, living through that character kind of.
So I don't think. I mean, it is a problem if you seriously cannot separate your own identity, from an online persona or a video game persona. That is horrible. You gotta sort of grow up.
You gotta work on that.
You gotta work on that because you aren't that video game character.
You're not. Yeah. I see also where I find flaw in the argument of where you can't dissociate. Back in the day, before we had video games.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't there, but
Me neither.
there was other entertainment fashions. You go play a game of tag, kickball. You lose a game of kickball, you're like, gosh diggity, that makes me rather chapped.
Indeed, point, sir.
But a kid would come home and be angry about that and would shout at their mom because she's just like, do the dishes, and you're like, I just lost a game of kickball. Or I feel like it would be just the same. I just lost a game of whatever.
Yeah, I mean, people fight in sports in general.
Yeah. I mean, you look at hockey.
You look at hockey, that's basically boxing on ice, you know?
Yeah, well, sometimes.
Yeah. But, so I wouldn't say, yeah, I guess video games do help. They do influence violence.
To a degree, because if they do, then so does all the other media.
Yeah.
And the thing where it's like parents are always getting, complaining about video games because they're like, oh, it's making my child so violent all the time. And then, they're eating dinner, watching the news about a terrorist attack and a serial rapist going around their neighborhood.
Yeah.
And they're thinking, oh, that video game, it's really warping my child's mind.
Yeah, it's nothing to do with the toxicity of
the news that I'm watching.
the media I'm just feeding my child.
Yeah. Or, you go out, you watch the new Marvel movie, superheroes, woo! You take Iron Man, for example. That repulsor is not knocking people off their feet.
Yes,
It's killing them. But, you don't... kids are just like, wow, that's so cool, I wish I had an Iron Man suit.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not all that different. I mean, yes, you're a passive observer to those things.
Yeah, which is, I guess, the main difference.
But then you get people with TV shows, for example, that are living those characters, like you were saying. So it's no different from a video game in that aspect, I think.
Yeah, media is media when in regards to influencing. I do think another reason why video games are being like they're the main focus.
They're targeted.
Is because it's been so popular. It's everywhere now.
Oh yeah.
If you live in the first world, you've heard of a video game. You've probably played a video game, or own a video game. Like. It's just everywhere. There's esports now. It's all over the media.
It's everywhere.
Right? So I feel like it's now, since it's more popular in comparison to the past, nobody was complaining about video games being...
Back when it was an arcade machine, you had to strut down to the arcade, with your...
sack of quarters.
Sack of quarters. Just play some Pac-Man.
Yeah, so... Nobody was really complaining about video games. I mean, albeit they were a lot less.
That's the other thing with
violent.
Well, not even violent, because if you play Galaga, you're a spaceship gunning down aliens. However,
that is true.
It is 100% pixelated.
Yeah.
Versus nowadays,
which is
where I recently watched the some trailers for some games that are coming out. The new Diablo, new Gears, and it's like. Whew, those are some really good-looking graphics.
Yeah, which is...
It's, it's... I don't want to say concerning, but it's like...
Damn!
that almost looks like a real person.
Yeah.
So do you think that with advancements in graphics, that this correlation between violent video games and real-world violence would rise because it looks more like real people?
Well, just because I don't think, going back to the point I made earlier, I'm not going to kill somebody. I don't want to kill anybody, right?
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, right? So, if I'm playing a video game that looks hyper-realistic and I'm killing somebody, doesn't mean that I want to go out afterwards and kill somebody. Doesn't mean that I will ever do something like that.
Okay. But do you think... Okay, so you're not going to do it. But do you think you would more readily... I don't want to say accept, but just, brush it off. Like it was nothing. So if your neighbor murdered someone, but you've been playing all these hyper-realistic games, do you think that you would find it as disturbing, I guess?
Yes. I mean, it does not change I can separate myself from video games, at least.
Right, but we're talking like really realistic. You know, on the course we're going.
I does not change the fact. When I'm playing a video game, I'm not feeling what my character's feeling. I'm not there. I know that when I'm shooting somebody, I'm not actually shooting a person. So, if I'm playing a whole bunch of hyper-realistic shooters, or whatever, a hyper-realistic violent video game,
Yeah.
and then my neighbor decides to kill his wife,
Mm-hmm.
that is big difference from me click-clacking on my keyboard to actually seeing, Jim or whatever with his dead wife. That's horrible. That's concerning. That's real life. That's not fake. I feel like if we get to a point, maybe in the future, when we get to a point where virtual reality is, coming into it, it might be a
look
different
at
situation.
the movie that came out, I don't know when, but Ready Player One.
Ready Player One.
That movie was based around a hyper-realistic video game that everyone lived in.
Yeah.
And you're going about your daily life, being a character that is gunning down other people. So, if we get to that kind of point, do you really think it's that far of a stretch to say that people would more readily, not everyone, obviously.
Of course, yeah.
But would be more ready to accept violence in the real world because they couldn't separate it from their video game world.
I mean, I could see accepting violence more, but I don't think it would ever change the actual reality of the thing. Like, if we're using the murder as an example, doesn't matter how many hyper realistic virtual reality games I play. I mean, sure, it may not be as appalling because I'm, like we said, desensitized to violence. The act itself may not seem
as heinous.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's still murder. In my mind, murder is murder. You murdered somebody, I'm switching neighborhoods.
Well, I'd hope they'd be switching neighborhoods to, like the
jail
prison neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like it's gonna desensitize people a bit, but it's too different to even compare in a way.
I agree.
Yeah. Like, if I see a car crash happen in real life,
yes,
and I see people, my brain's making the connection that, hey, you're not dreaming, you're not playing a video game. That is a dead person, maybe, if they died.
That is a severely injured person.
You're probably going to be in shock. You're definitely in shock. You just witnessed a death.
Yes. But if we get these really realistic games where it's like, it looks like people. It looks like real people.
Which, I mean, to be honest, some of the games have already achieved.
I know, it's like...
Stop. But don't.
No, yeah, stop but don't. I get that. But,
I don't think it would change the reality of the situation, but I think it would...
Maybe the graveness to you?
Yeah, maybe just... I think I might be more comfortable. I wouldn't say... That's a bad word to use.
That is...
More accepting...
let's go less traumatized.
Less traumatized. Yeah. That is the word. Because, I mean, you look at kids in really bad ghettos.
Okay.
That have violence all around them all the time.
Yes.
And then they see a guy walking down the street and just shoot somebody. Mm-hmm. They're used to that, because they've seen it.
Well, yeah. I mean, horrible.
Their entire lives, right? So they're used to seeing that. But, little Timmy from a nice suburban town in America or in wherever, seeing the same thing happen, even though he played so many video games,
he'd probably be more traumatized. I see what you're saying.
Very much so. And it also depends on how much the person has invested their time into that game, and
I guess how much of this particular media they've consumed.
Yeah, because if you're just casually playing it, right, and then it's just video games. It's like watching the news. But if you're really in depth into this game, that's super hyper realistic, and you cannot separate your own self from that kind of from that video game, then you might be looking at some problems, some mental problems maybe.
Okay, that's fair. So let's say this then. If, for example, for whatever reason, goes up.
Okay.
Like public violence goes up.
And like in the real world.
In real world, not video game world, real world.
Real world.
So it goes up. And then you see more of that reported on the news.
Yeah.
With more in-depth detail.
Yeah.
So that it really, immerses you in it. Do you think that you would, like with the hyper-real video games, be less traumatized if you saw something like that happen right in front of you? Because the news is really good at fear-mongering you.
It is. Yeah. Super good. I mean, it's... Yeah.
I mean, you find some of the old reports, like when a PSP came out, and it's just like, whoa!
PSP causes cancer, and your son will murder your entire family.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm just playing some Little Big Planet 2 as a sock boy, and
Yeah, I'm a sock boy.
but I don't think, personally, I don't think it would, unless I am witnessing these murders and these heinous, the violence myself in my day-to-day life.
Yeah.
I think it would still be, I think I'd be more mentally prepared if I were to see it.
So, would you say it's on equal par with the video game? If we're assuming it's a hyper-real video game,
Yeah,
in comparison to news that is reporting in great detail on a regular basis.
with pictures and videos and
Pictures,
whole lot.
videos, whole in-depth report of how they died. Whether it's, a long car chase and cops popping out the window and
or
ba 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 ba, or it's like they were walking down the road and got stabbed by some crazy. They give you full details.
to be quite fair, I don't think either. I think they're both. Yeah, I think they're both on the same kind of playing field. Because, well, in one hand you have stuff that is happening, murders that you
In the world.
you can
they
see.
have happened.
You have footage, you have videos, you have pictures, you have, testimonies and everything.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you have something that looks really real.
And you are controlling
And you
the
can
character that's doing it.
Interact with the environment. I don't think. I mean, I don't think either of those are going to lessen the shock and the absolute horror that I witness if I were to see it in real life. But I feel like, yeah, no, I don't think they would change all that much. I mean, again, like I'd say, in both cases you might be a little bit more mentally prepared, depending on how much you've watched of, like how much you've played the video game, how much you've actually
Yes. How much
You've
of
seen.
the media you've consumed.
Yeah, that would change it, but real life is like you take driving, big difference. You're playing a video game and you're driving along.
Okay.
It could be as hyper real. Like there's those nice big TVs
rigs where it's
with
just
the
like
with the handles.
you may as well be driving.
Exactly, but you're not.
Yeah.
And there is a big difference because, well, obviously you don't feel the shaking, you don't feel the acceleration, you don't feel, it's different. It's really different.
Yes.
No matter how many hours you put into that video game simulation of driving, it will always be completely different from how the real world is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing to me, at least. What are your thoughts?
I think that personally, for me, that the news would be more impactful media-wise, especially if they're giving constant in-depth reports
Yeah,
that are like immersive,
yeah.
because it has happened.
It is happening.
It is happening. Violence is on the rise. More
Around
people are
you.
dying.
Yeah.
It is happening in your city.
Mm-hmm.
You never know. So I feel like that would be more of a desensitivity in comparison to the video game, because the video game, you can literally turn it off whenever,
That is true. Well, I mean,
but you can't just stop the world's violence whenever.
that is
You
true.
like the news, of course, you can turn off the channel,
You could, yeah,
but you can't turn off the story that's actually happened.
because it happened.
Whereas a video game, you can be like, oh, I didn't like what actually happened. Reload my checkpoint and
Reload
choose a
the save.
different thing,
That is fair.
right? So I feel like the news would have if it was doing such reports. I know there's like there's certain things you can't show on TV for good reason.
Yeah, dead bodies. I don't know if you can show those on TV. I don't want to see a dead body.
I don't think you can. I don't think you can.
Okay.
But regardless,
Yeah.
I feel like given the scenario that we set up where there's video game and news at basically a hyper-real level,
Yeah.
I think the news would have more of an impact impacting how we respond to violence, but also how we become / don't become more violent.
Okay.
Because if violence is on the rise and they put out a news story about it, in-depth reports, this and that,
Yeah.
then more people are going to be desensitized to it.
Would you say desensitized or more aware?
Both.
Both. That's
I
fair.
would say both. They're going to be like, if it does happen, they're not going to feel as bad about it.
Yeah.
But if they see something that they can prevent,
Yeah.
then they're going to take more steps to do that.
That's fair.
Whereas with video games, I don't think that the that'll affect how people are putting out violence, but it would only affect how people are responding themselves to the violence.
I would agree.
Because if you're living through this character in a video game, that's great. But in real life, you don't have twin katanas. You're not this psycho advanced
badass.
Yeah, like
Killing machine.
exactly.
You're
You're
Tim.
not that. You're Tim.
You're Tim, who has a minimum wage job.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like the news would impact in a more positive way. Personally, I think.
I think I would agree. Like you said, yeah, the news it's telling you this has happened in your area.
Yeah.
Like you said, video games, it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
You're just, it's fake.
It's
right?
fake. The
It's
whole thing's
fake.
manufactured.
It looks super real, but it's not.
Yeah. You could just as easily just hit off.
Yeah,
Done.
but yeah, I guess the news would bring a more awareness, to the situation. I wouldn't say desensitized. I feel like that's a bad word for it, but definitely people would be more aware and more willing to, like you said, react positively. Because even if I heard, buddy got murdered on Tuesday, next day another person got murdered, next day another person got murdered,
Yeah.
I'm still, I guess the murder is always going to be the same. Somebody's dead.
Yeah.
I feel horrible. Yes, someone's dead. Someone got killed. I don't think that's going to change the fact. I don't think we're going to get more desensitized. We might be more accepting of the fact of the reality,
Yeah.
which I guess in a way is sort of desensitizing.
That is basically desensitizing.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I think we need to return to
Yeah.
is, the original question is, does media
Media.
influence people to become more violent? And we talked about how video games, but with the news, think of it from a different standpoint. Because I know when ISIS was on the rise, and they'd see this attack, some people would see that as them fighting for their religious right, their belief, their
Caliphate.
their whatever it is that they're fighting for. They'd see that,
Yeah.
get inspired to a degree by that, and then they'd go out and commit violence. That is a fact that it happens.
No, yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that, or I would be saying that, I don't feel like somebody who isn't willing to commit an act of violence in the first place, just by seeing a news article or just by watching the news or whatever, is automatically gonna,
Well, of course.
there are the extremists. I mean, if Bill was watching, like you said, like an ISIS thing, right?
Yeah.
That's a bad name for it. But regardless, Bill's watching this and he thought, oh yeah, that is true. They are fighting for what I believe.
Yeah.
I should join them. I feel like Bill beforehand was already thinking about, maybe causing violence, or he already had the capacity to do so before he.
So, just so it's clear, you don't think
Yeah.
that media can change someone from nonviolent to violent?
I think the person. I don't not. I feel like people are more inclined to do something that they could have already done. Like, I'm saying, if I never wanted to hurt somebody,
Yeah.
there's most likely, after watching an article, I'm not going to hurt somebody.
Right.
Or watching a news story, playing some video games.
What if you watched 10,
Multiple.
15?
It really, I guess it depends on the person at that point.
See, because I, personally, if someone consumes enough of a certain media, or a certain severity
Yeah.
of a certain media,
Yeah.
it's like super intense, I think that news or video games could potentially, provided they're, an appropriate severity or quantity,
Yeah.
could turn someone from nonviolent to violent.
But I feel like they would have to still be willing to a certain degree to do it. Because if I, if I don't want to do meth, right?
Okay.
And I watch 30 videos, whatever, read 30 articles about the benefits of meth.
Great benefits.
Great benefits.
Great.
Right?
Okay.
I hope that I'm well, I don't want to say I hope, and I pretty much know for a fact that I'm still not going to do meth afterwards. And depending on how persuasive those articles are, I guess it could change my mind.
See, exactly. That's what I mean by severity. Do you think that is any different from committing violent acts? Maybe not necessarily as severe as we've been saying, like murder.
Okay.
But, okay.
Like assault.
Assault.
Yeah.
Where, you read 10 articles on how, for whatever reason, you need to beat up anyone with a red shirt.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's
And
red shirt.
you can, you watch these news articles. You play this game where you're always against people in red shirts. You read up on all these articles. I know it's a ridiculous comparison.
Red shirts, yeah. But
then being a complete, I don't want to beat up anyone. Consuming that severely, being persuasive, like you said.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that it could persuade someone to commit violence.
Yeah, you know what? I guess, it already exists. Like, I can't say that is not a possibility, because, you look at flat earthers. You click on one video about flat earth, and then YouTube recommends you another one, and you keep clicking, and then somehow, somewhere down the YouTube trail of videos, you've convinced yourself that the earth is flat.
Yes.
Even, I think, what is this? Placebo bias, I think it is what the name of it is.
Maybe.
I think I was just watching a video on it. It's like something you believe in something based on a bias you have towards the thing. Maybe this is the bad use of it. Maybe it's the improper use of it. But like, you believe the world was flat or round at one point,
yes.
And after hundreds of videos of flat Earth science, air quotes on that science. You've suddenly, you've started to agree with them, and then you put that they start saying, hey, maybe all the flat earthers are crazy, and they're,
and then you're gonna retort to that, because they're trying to disprove something you're considering.
Yeah.
And yeah, I get that.
So also going back on my point that people won't be changed because of some media, like it was sometime in 2018 19 when that New Zealand Australian guy shot up mosque,
Oh,
and then shouted, "Subscribe!" Like he killed a whole bunch of people
yeah.
with, you know, he got a gun, shot up a whole bunch of people, and then at the end of it, he said, "Subscribe to PewDiePie."
Actually,
Yeah, I mean PewDiePie obviously has no influence on it, direct influence.
direct influence. That's the key thing, because if even us putting
Yeah.
out this, you know, this podcast right
Yeah.
here, whoever listens to it, howdy out there, but
Howdy, yeah.
we're having an influence, and if for whatever reason we just convinced someone to go commit, you know, violence,
Don't.
first, don't do
Don't
that.
do that. If you're thinking about it,
Don't.
go upstairs, grab a glass of water. If you can't go upstairs, get a glass of water and just sit down, take a sip, and just don't.
Regardless,
Yeah.
we have direct influence because,
Mm-hmm.
of course, we're trying to, you know, have people think deeper into their own thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, provoking discussion. But we also have indirect impacts. You know, who knows? Maybe you start a brand new discussion with someone you never met, and you meet the love of your life. That's not a direct influence of us. So I
No.
feel like news, video games, all media sources
Mhm.
have the same thing. So if a news article comes out,
Yeah.
this guy got murdered by someone who believed that people who wear red shirts are
Bad
demons.
or evil. Yeah.
Yeah. Then, of course, they're getting the message out. They're educating you on what's happened. But then the indirect influence
Mm-hmm.
is people saying, like, oh, well, why did he think that? Or,
Yeah.
oh, I kind of think that too. Of course, you know, that is...
A bad example, but
well, it's
it's
not
an-
necessarily,
Yeah.
because it is ridiculous.
it is.
But so are so many of the other things.
that is true.
You know, you think
Like-
about it. Like, I hate you because your pigment is darker. Like,
That
flawless logic.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Maybe you're just one big freckle.
Yep.
Or maybe you don't have enough freckles. You know, it's like...
it could be either one. I feel like every source of media influences people to some degree, and I'm gonna disagree with what I said earlier. I feel like I'm gonna sort of disagree with what I said earlier. Most likely, if you didn't want to commit violence in the first place,
Yeah.
after reading or after consuming a certain amount of media, you're most likely still not going to commit violence. However, there have been very persuasive people and videos. I think I don't speak German. I don't really know, but I was told by maybe a social studies teacher that during Hitler's rule, like
Oh, yeah, no, he was super persuasive
super persuasive. I mean, how
towards
else?
the German people.
How else could he have done what he did? Ted Bundy is another example. Again, he's not necessarily media, but he convinced other people to kill for him.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't know a lot about him, but yeah,
No.
everybody is malleable to a certain degree, but you have to let yourself be malleable or vulnerable to be able to be persuaded to do something.
I think, going back to the original question, in summary, for me personally, I think that the media, when consumed in the correct degree and
Amount.
it will not influence people.
Okay.
But if you are, you know, consuming the medias, and you're realizing them in a way that they weren't necessarily intended by the publisher, then I believe 100% that almost any person could commit violence based on media that they've consumed, because really we shape our mind world. You know, the world is how we perceive it. We shape our perceptions on everything that we take in.
That is true.
So if all we're taking in is the earth is flat, the earth is flat, the earth is flat, the earth is flat, the earth is flat,
Then
now you think the earth is flat.
it's not.
Let's clear that up.
It's not.
But then if you're taking in, you know, beating up people's okay, beating up people's okay, beating up people's okay, now there's no difference. Really, I think.
Yeah.
Personally, for me.
Okay. I would agree with you that. Yeah, going back to the main point, does media influence people to become more violent? Yes and no. Yes, that it influences people, period,
Yeah.
to become more violent if, you're consuming a lot of violence through the media and you are curious to a certain degree for me